Okay, so last time out we talked about root pressure and we talked about transpiration. So root pressure is when water is forced up your xylem by your roots, and transpiration is when you get loss of water because of evaporation at the stomata. So both of these together are only part of the story as to how water can move up through exceptionally tall plants. So it's called the cohesion tension model, and it comes at the bottom of page 180 in my notes book. And it has the cohesion tension model of water transport in xylem higher level. So this is an American redwood. If you've ever been to the Discovery in Castle Comer, as you walk along the walkway before you get to the barrier into the main park, you will see on the left hand side there's an American redwood. These have really, really soft bark, so if you punch it, the bark is actually squishy. These can be hundreds of feet high, so you find them in California. And this is a photograph of one, and you can see from the photo that there's all these little lines because they're all little sections. That's how big the tree is. So somebody literally took a picture of the section, going up. So why aren't root pressure and transpiration enough to explain? The reason being, once you get to a certain point, force of gravity kicks in, and as much root pressure as is there is not going to force water up the xylem because the force of gravity is going to be too great. So as we've said, both root pressure and transpiration, they partially explain it, but the cohesion tension model is going to fill in the gaps for us. So the reason that the SEC like it is that there were two Irish scientists involved, and you only really have to have their surnames. They're Dixon and Jolly. They kind of look very twinsy. These gentlemen were based in Trinity, and they essentially came up with the detail for the cohesion tension model. So you need the names in the red box. Now, to explain their model, we have to do a little bit of chemistry. So my chemists in the room last year, we would have done hydrogen bonding. You may have blanked it out, but here's where it comes into its own. So cohesion essentially means similar molecules that they stick together, they like each other. And water molecules actually stick to each other through a process called hydrogen bonding. Now, this little diagram down here, you can put it into your book. So this isn't proper chemistry diagram of hydrogen bonding, but it's just the yellow dots here are the hydrogen bonds, and this is showing you how these guys are attracted. So they are the hydrogen bonds. And I'm going to come out of this just so that I can show you a little explanation as to...
Although a water molecule has no net charge, it is polar. The oxygen end carries a slightly negative charge, and the opposite end is slightly positive. Because of its polarity, one water molecule attracts and interacts with others. This graphic shows the hydrogen bonding pattern in liquid water. The dashed lines signify hydrogen bonds. In ice, each water molecule hydrogen bonds to 4 others to form a 3-dimensional lattice. The lattice is less dense than liquid water. This is why ice floats on water.
Okay, so you don't have to know the chemistry behind this, but in ridiculously simple non-chemistry terms, if we take a water molecule as just being a circle, and what we're saying in terms of hydrogen bonding is that I do it as a comparison of water has 4 hands. So one of its hands is here holding the water molecule above it, and the other hand is holding the water molecule below it. Now, as I say, this is ridiculously simple in terms of its description, but if you can imagine that water has 4 hands, one hand is involved in holding the water molecule above it, the other one is holding the water molecule below it, and this is happening with every water molecule that's present in the xylem. So that is cohesion. That is attraction between water molecules via hydrogen bonding. So water molecule attraction, and it is because of hydrogen bonding. Okay, so again, you won't have to draw the diagrams. The diagrams are just to help you with your understanding. So via hydrogen bonding. So that's cohesion, attraction between water molecules. So then we move to the next part of it. And that part is called adhesion. So glue adheres pages together, wood together, whatever it is you want. So in adhesion, we now have the idea of different molecules liking each other and sticking together. And here it's the water sticks to the xylem walls. So this is a little water molecule, and it is now going to be attracted to the xylem in some way. So that is the attraction between the wall. So if you have a bottle of water in front of you or a glass of water and you look at it, you will see that there is what's called a meniscus in your water. And that you are seeing adhesion. So it goes like this. So at the sides here is where you're seeing the adhesion. The water is attracted to the wall, and here, the fact that it moves down here, that is the cohesion part. Water molecules being attracted to each other, they actually pull themselves down together. So adhesive forces are not as great as cohesive forces. So what does that mean? So we go back to here, and I'll draw it in blue because we're transporting xylem. So this is now the walls of our xylem. We've said the white is the cohesive forces, or the hydrogen bonds between the water, but now we have the idea that water is now attracted to the wall of the xylem. And I've drawn it in dashed lines. So these forces that are holding it to the wall aren't as strong as these forces. So it means that if you have transpiration happening and water is coming out through the stoma, then I'm going to make this small so we can see it. So what that means is, for these molecules to move up, this force has to be broken. And as long as there's transpiration happening, these forces will keep being broken, but your cohesive forces, the hydrogen bonds, won't be broken. So the water molecule will stay attached as we go from top to bottom, or from bottom to top, but it's these ones at the side will be broken as the water molecules move up the xylem. So cohesion and adhesion. So adhesion is when water is attracted to the xylem walls. And as a force, it is less than the force of hydrogen bonding. So that is why the water can move up through the xylem. Okay, so again, simple terms. Describe in your head, water has 4 hands. 2 hands are involved in hydrogen bonding between it and 2 other water molecules, and that bond is really, really strong. Whereas adhesion is when its other 2 arms are attached to the xylem wall, and if you pull the water out of the stoma by transpiration, the hands that are touching the wall will literally start climbing up the wall, and the water is going to move up through your xylem. So it's a real simple way of looking at it. Now, I'm going to show you animations again in a second, but there are 7 sentences that the SEC will look for if you have to describe the cohesion tension model. So essentially, usually the marking points will be gone for your first 4 things. And the first 4 things are essentially the 4 definitions. So root pressure, if you tell them what that is. So root pressure is due to osmosis, where water is pushed up your xylem as it enters your root. It's then talking about transpiration. So transpiration pulls water up your xylem as a water molecule evaporates through your stoma. If you want to put that in there, that won't. Your third thing now is explaining what cohesive forces are. So then that's the attraction between water molecules, and it's through hydrogen bonding, and you explain your adhesive forces. So adhesive forces are when the water molecules are attracted to the xylem. So those 4 things, usually that's all of your marking points done. But there are extra bits. So this is the proper explanation of it. So we've said transpiration pulls water out of the xylem, and it will pull the next molecule with it because of the cohesive forces. So these are the hydrogen bonds, and we get this continuous column of water, and it goes from root all the way up to the top of your American redwood, and it stretches the water. So if you're going to pull one, you're pulling them all. They're not going to fly out through your stoma, but they will get stretched, and this column of water is now what's called under tension. So we have our 4 definitions of things up here, and this then is the explanation of cohesion and tension. So cohesion is when all the water molecules are in this continuous column, and tension is because this column of water gets stretched as each molecule leaves out through the stoma. The last sentence is just that these hydrogen bonds, these cohesive forces, they will hold the water and allow it to be pulled to great heights. So they hold the water in the column, and the tension, so the fact that you've stretched them, is enough to keep pulling them all the way out through the top of your water. So this is why water can move from your roots hundreds of feet up into the air. Now, as long as there is a continuous column of water in your xylem, then that pull will go from down the stem all the way to the root. So if you cut half a tree, the tree halfway across, so if this was the diameter and you cut from here to here, this side of the tree will still be able to transport water. This side won't, because now you've broken that column and it won't recover from it. And cohesion tension, the model only works in the narrow xylem tubes, so that's also a helping hand to getting movement of water. And the last little bit is the cohesive forces between water molecules are great enough to hold water in a column without breaking, even when they're stretched, so even when the tension is applied. So I'm going to go out here, and I am going to find for you the right little diagram that looks like this. So this is just showing you water entering your root hairs by osmosis, more water outside, less water in here, and it literally is a past parcel. We said in our last lesson that to get across the ground tissue, your water has to move by diffusion, and once it's in the xylem, it is now going to be moving via cohesion and adhesion. So down here there will be some root pressure pushing it up, but there comes a point when gravity is making it want to go back down, so that's when cohesion tension comes in. And these are just showing you your water molecules all attracted to each other, and you pull one via transpiration, you pull them all, so it's a continuous column of water. And when you are doing the transpiration, the pulling of water, it's putting that column under tension. So that just means it's stretching it out. Now, the other thing that I wished to show you is, so the last little bit of this is at the top of page 182. So we've said stoma open in daylight. The reason stoma are opening in daylight is to remind you is that photosynthesis is occurring. There is a decrease in your CO2 content in your air spaces, and just stomata open for gas exchange. So once the stoma are open, there will also transpiration will start. And because we are pulling this column of water, it actually, and because the xylem and water like each other, the xylem is actually becomes narrower, and the diameter of the stem actually will decrease in your tree or in any other plant. And the fact that the lignin is there, so lignin is that chemical that if it's in the vessels is in a spiral around the vessels, and it's inbuilt into the tracheids structure, but lignin will make the xylem strong, so it will allow it to stretch and become narrow without breaking. The flip side then is at night. So at night we've said there's a decrease in the rate of photosynthesis. You are going to get carbon dioxide levels are going to increase because there's no photosynthesis happening to remove them in your air spaces, and because of that the stomata close. So now transpiration has stopped. So there's no tension now in our water column because it's not being pulled out through the stomata, and that allows the xylem to go back to its original shape. And there is a level of elasticity in your xylem walls. So if you were to measure the diameter of your plant, then it would actually get wider at night. So this is the last little video I am going to show you. Is this little guy. So this is showing you here your water coming in by osmosis. So that's your root hair, your soil. This is your xylem going across your ground tissue. So we're going to have root pressure at this point. It's now going up through the stem of your plant, the trunk of your tree. So we have attraction between the water molecules, cohesion because of hydrogen bonding, and we have adhesion to the walls. And then finally, when they get to the leaves, we will have the water diffuse into the leaf cells, and the water that is produced in respiration is going to move via the stomata. So transpiration creates a tension because you're pulling that water column from roots all the way up to the top of your plant, and if the stomata close, that tension stops. Your xylem gets wider. So that brings us to the end of the cohesion tension model. So as I say, it's the 7 sentences. They are the things that the SEC is going to look for. They can also answer other questions that are asked. So they'll answer the question that says describe the cohesion tension model. But it will answer other questions as well if you have to supply definitions of transpiration, root pressure, adhesion and cohesion. I'm on Zoom, so if you have any questions, come ask.